Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Challenge All-Stars 5 Rivals podcast for episode 8. I am Brian Cohen. As always, is my co-host, Lasher. How are you?
Let's just channel Turbo. I'm not perfect, but I'm always myself. My new motto.
Channeling Turbo is a dangerous game to play in the long term.
I mean, if I could start using that line as like an excuse to just do whatever, like I will side with Turbo on all things.
When you start living in the living room and complaining about people partying, that'll be the bridge too far, I guess.
Oh, I mean, I got in trouble in my sorority for permanently sleeping on the couch in the living room because I was on the 4th floor of a walk-up. Like, are you insane? I'm not going upstairs at 3 a.m. I'm sleeping on this couch. I am Turbo. Turbo is me.
Okay, there we go. Brian and Turbo coming at you.
I think that's where our similarities start and stop.
I think that's fair.
I don't think Turbo would want to be compared to me. I'm probably more of a pea chicken in his mind, but what I could relate to is all of the various trendy skincare, hair care going on. The LED mask is back in a big way in this episode. It is.
Yeah, a lot of I think a topic of conversation in the comments. I think as well. People are asking like, what is it about? What's going on? So it's like the hot item of the season. I don't know if they're monetizing it, but it really should be up on the challenge store that doesn't exist.
Yeah, Shane's. It looks like they slapped like a challenge sticker on his LED helmet instead of whatever brand name. So like that. I mean, they're one step away from having their own challenge line of LED skincare and hair care.
Pitch it to Shark Tank. Here we go.
Pitch it to me. Take my money. I'm like the literal meme, like, but I don't have a fistful of cash, unfortunately.
I think so. Off this episode, the one thing I was like thinking about as we started right before this, is there anyone, if you flash forward to the end of the season, and the winner is not Adam and Steve or Nani and Turbo, that's like would be a wild upset, right? Like I feel like it's like very odd to be like this point in the season, and like conceivably in my eyes, there's only like 2 viable winners to a season. And I feel like that's where we're at. I think it's like one of those 2 teams. And it's like one of them is probably going to get a clip before the final, and the other one's going to cruise to a win. I think that's where we're at.
Okay. So when you say wild or 2 viable winners, you mean from like a possible winner perspective, not from like a satisfying storytelling rootable winner perspective.
No, definitely not. I mean, satisfying.
Okay.
If Katie and Veronica win, that would be unbelievably satisfying.
Okay.
And everything, like just from a not like taking away the non-zero chance of like anything can potentially happen on the show, but like a true viable winner. It just feels like it's one of these 2 teams at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting because I put up a poll before last week's episode as a check-in of who is the pick to win. Now, I don't think I clarified, like, winner pick is loaded. Is it like who do you think is going to win, or is it who you want to win? Adam and Steve ran away with 40% of the votes. Fessel and Amber, who were still in it, 30%. Nani and Turbo as a distant 12%. So I think from the audience's perspective, you're right in line. I agree physically, like it would be shocking if any of the other teams were able to upset Adam and Steve or Nani and Turbo. What I think the question is, and this is the drum Shane was pounding sort of in the wrong way, is are both of those teams going to get to the end? Because I think the most interesting storyline is like, now maybe no one can beat Nani and Turbo in the elimination, and the best case scenario is those teams go against each other and one of them comes out, like you're saying, and goes to the final. But I do think for the first time in a very long time in Challenge All-Stars or proper, the sort of weaker, quote-unquote, physically teams might have a chance to, like, get out all the strong people before the final.
And the way it's playing out, it's almost like it feels in a way that, like, they're breaking the game and, like, shouldn't it always happen like this? And I don't understand. Like, thinking back, how does it always not happen like this? Like, how do people like Jordan and CT and Bananas and Laurel and Kari get to the end? Like, there are so many more people who wouldn't have a chance to win over them. How do they all not regularly come together and do what is happening right now? It feels in a way like this should happen every season, and then we would discuss like how do you fix the show in a sense, like, but it just doesn't happen like this, and I don't understand how it doesn't always happen like this.
Well, it's a big the challenge, one of the challenge's biggest assets and why we've been here for 10 years, right, is because there's so much history and they bring some of your favorites back, right? Like there will always be a person that my brother who hasn't watched the show in decades recognizes. Like there is so much history between these people over decades. One of its greatest weaknesses is they always bring people back, and there are people who have been here over decades, because it's what a lot of people have been in the Facebook group talking about. We've talked about it here. Like, how is Frank ever going to be able to play this game again when people watch the way his gameplay has been? People are playing more for longer term relationships. Maybe this isn't the season I win, but I have to keep my friendships, or I have to keep my trustworthy reputation. And I think that's one of the reasons why we don't see people targeting the big threats, because they'll come back next season and take them out, and exact their revenge. This has been so exciting because people like Veronica or Frank are seasoned enough to not care or not worried about coming back, because Frank has been back in 100 years. So it's been great.
Yeah, I saw that comment about Frank, and it almost made me think, like, Survivor obviously used to do it, and then like Sia took over of giving money to people. Big Brother does it with America's Favorite Player. But I actually think the challenge would benefit the most. And I would love to see how it would play out if, like, the karma vote was almost like the right idea, but they should have given it to the fans instead of the players. And I would love to see if they regularly had, not even just like first place winner, but like you vote for your 3 favorite players for the season. You give out like $150,000 and $25,000. And now you all of a sudden have these people playing for the fans, in a sense. Like, I'm going to give the fans what they want. I don't know if I can win the show, but I can win that part of the show, and let me try to get the money that way. And I think the challenge would benefit more than a Survivor or Big Brother of doing like a fan rewarding system. And I would love to see how it would play out for one of these seasons.
It would be interesting to see if, like Survivor, like what the quote unquote casual challenge fan, should they exist, thinks. Like, where would the majority of the viewers' vote go? Like, I have to imagine there are a huge amount of people who love the Vacation Alliance. They're Big Brother people. They're Devin people. He's a great narrator. They like that it's a loyal game. Like, I mean, just based on of what a lot of the casual audience Survivor thinks, like, I definitely think the age differences of the challenge viewer might, skew more gameplay and strategy and cutthroatness and whatever. But I would just be curious. Like, certainly I think the fan vote of our listeners would skew Frank. I just wonder if that's shared throughout the slightly larger audience of the actual show.
But I do think it would skew more towards our audience, because obviously the Survivor audience is much bigger. So like the subset that watches the podcast, listens to the Rob Duel, is obviously bigger than this, but still I think a smaller percentage probably than the overall Survivor base. I think there's just much more of a Survivor casual base than there is a challenge casual base. So I think the comments you see on our threads, on Reddit, on Twitter, like, I think that would represent much more of the voting, and we wouldn't see the casual base take up much more of an ownership that the Big Brother and Survivor audience would. So I think a lot of it would skew, like, people would give, like, the top vote getters would be like Veronica and Frank, I would think. And I would love to see them both be rewarded for this season in a way, since they probably aren't going to be rewarded for like winning the final. Give them a similar-ish prize for being like the most entertaining player.
Yeah, I mean, I'd vote for them. Could I see Adam and Steve? Like, I'm just like picturing people I don't know being like, Adam and Steve were underdogs and were physically dominant. They get my vote, and like, that would be fine. Like, it all would be fine. But I am just very, very interested in seeing how this plays out. And if, again, Nani and Turbo and Adam and Steve can even make it to the final, and how that breakdown would have to occur between Frank, Veronica, and Shane. Like, it's really set up to have a really potentially interesting next couple of episodes. And something I was thinking about before we started here is like, I think we're still hearing a lot from the audience that like people are down on this season. And it definitely got off to a slow start. And I don't know if it's just more interesting from a podcasting perspective than it is if we were just watching the show. But I'm having more fun talking about the season in the last like 3 episodes than maybe I did all of 40. You know, of like actually because the edit is troubling, so we have to be like guessing what happened,
Right.
and B, because I think there's like multiple viable different paths that folks could be taking, and they're setting it out kind of decently where we can understand the game's small enough that we can kind of see where things are shaking out, and it's interesting to kind of speculate on where it's going to go.
Yeah, it's a quick, fast-paced game. There's clear sides of the house. There's viable people to go in each week, or what might happen, the winning of the dailies, like sways things. Yeah, there's a lot of things to like about how these 3 episodes has gone. The one thing is interesting. I do agree that it seems like we're set up for a good last 2 episodes before potentially a final, but it does seem there's be a consensus that next week is the last elimination, because I heard them saying like, oh, so when like jumping ahead, like when Adam was trying to make the deal with Frank, they were like, we'll keep you safe for the next 2 eliminations, or the final 2 eliminations. And they were like, oh, including this one, right? So I think there's a sense that like with 6 people next week, there'll be a normal episode. But then going into the last one when there's 5, I think they're thinking there's not going to be like a regular elimination, and there might just be some sort of like star invitational, and it's like up to the last team to steal a star. It seems like they have a sense that when there's 5, it's not going to be a normal setup of an episode.
But it isn't that. I thought it was even more confusing than that, because right now there's 7 teams remaining. No, there's 7. Did I not cross out someone who went home? I've been keeping this vigilant.
I think there's
no, 6. There's 3 star holders, and then there's Davon and Shane, Sam and Frank, Katie, Veronica, Mel, and Nicole.
Right. So yes. So there's
7 teams remaining.
Okay.
1 will become a star holder, and it will be 3 unstarred folks and 4 starred teams. 1 more elimination will happen, and it will be 6.
Okay.
So I'm also confused, mostly because if this goes on longer than like April 17th, I'm going to need a sub for 2 weeks. So I was trying to figure out when this is going to end. The challenge, the longest challenge all-star seasons we've ever had is 12 episodes. The others have been like 10 and 8. Mm-hmm. So we're on episode 8. I have no idea how this is going to finish, because before Shane even said that, I was like, we kind of have like too many teams for how many episodes we've had.
Interesting. Well, because the episode 1 we didn't lose anyone. What happened? Yeah.
I more just meant like, how long is this season going to be? I got to get going on this. But so here's a question though. We talked about who you think's likely to win. Are you rooting for anyone? Because I do think this is maybe why people aren't so invested. Like, is anybody super rootable this season?
I do. I mean, Katie and Veronica obviously are very rootable, but it's like unlikely that but you never know with Challenge All-Stars finals, but it's unlikely that they could win. I do think Adam and Steve are fairly rootable. I think they're just like a little odd and quirky, but if they go on to win this season, especially if they like go into another elimination and beat Nani and Turbo in it, and then go to the final and win, I mean, it's one of the most impressive seasons that like anyone's ever had. I mean, like they would have done 5 eliminations to that, 6 eliminations to that point, winning a couple dailies along the way, and then they win a final. Like, that's an incredible story to be the team that goes in and in and in and then somehow win. So I think that they are a pretty rootable group. And they were like the team that most represented what the All-Stars theme was about. So it'd be cool, especially for this version of it. So it'd be cool to see if them win. I think they're pretty rootable.
Yeah, and for them to come in as like, targeted because they're the least connected and their own closest allies are voting them in because they're like, sorry, you don't have the votes, and then to go on and win. It would definitely be impressive. I'm not rooting against anyone. I'm just like not super invested in the overall outcome. I'm like much more invested on week to week what's happening. So like, but I don't need like some long-term, like, I've been wanting Leroy to win for decades, and I really that's the last time I had a real rooting interest, when we like put the champagne on ice that season, and it did not get consumed.
And I don't, but even though like I would love to see Nani win, I don't really want to see Turbo win. So that kind of paints a weird brush. But it could be cool to see Nani win at this point. But it doesn't. But it doesn't feel like that build up like it was for Leroy for whatever reason.
What's hard about the Nani Turbo of it all is like, I feel like a lot of their gameplay has happened to them. I think you made this point about Nani this season, and it hasn't like changed much. Like, yes, Nani and Turbo went on to win this elimination against Ashley and Dario. Huge. That's awesome. But like, they didn't have much agency in the early game, or when they had the agency, they made weird moves or contributed to weird like house votes and their allies throwing in like weaker teams. Then they lost all of their agency. And now it seems like they're resigned. Like when Nani and Turbo and Ashley and Dario at the house vote this week just have to vote for each other, knowing that the other person's going to be selected by Adam and Steve, they're very neutered. Like they have nothing else to do but kind of go in. So I don't feel like Nani has played this like great game and I'm rooting for her. And this would be like the cherry on top of the sundae, like Adam and Steve. Yeah. So.
Oh, so not to go back to it, but I was looking at the Wikipedia. I think we are at 6 teams now.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I have Frank and Sam twice. It's not a perfect system.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I thought,
I think I said Frank and Sam twice. That's on you for not.
It might be. Yeah, it's fair enough.
No. Okay. That makes me feel better. All right. Now I'm feeling more confident I'll be here for the finale. So.
Because that's why in my head I was like, wait, I thought I was confused by the way they're saying it, but then, all right. You know what? Don't listen to women.
Yeah. Cut, print. No, what's so funny is like, I so rarely say things with confidence when I'm right. And I came with full confidence about being wrong. It's incredible. You could get men be dumb, you know? No, my bad. All right. Excellent. That works for me. If only you could see my beautiful chart that was wrong. Let's talk about Veronica and Shane's dynamic because that kind of sets up the episode LED to LED. It's like, Veronica's again reassessing. I want to get the weaker teams to the final, and I just need Veronica to be in on it. And what's so interesting is like Frank, Veronica, and Shane share the same objective, but I'm gonna have to get Shane a prescription for like some Delulu-itis because I just don't think he has a good handle on like who is a stronger versus weaker team. Because if they could just work together, I do not believe for 1 second Frank is coming after Shane.
No, I don't think he is. I think it won't. Like he would come after him in the sense that Shane and Devon are probably the strongest of like that group of like the Mel, Nicole, Frank, and Sam, like that 4 or 5 teams. I think they're probably the strongest. But there wouldn't be no time left to come after them. But if they got all the other strong teams out, they'd be at the final. So it's not like you're playing to 2 teams where like you don't have to worry about that for Shane and Devon. Like, sure, in a final 4, would Frank and Sam look to be coming after them? Probably. But a final 4 is the final. So there's no way for them to come after them. So it does feel like it's a problem that Shane is creating in his head that it would be a very, very, very specific scenario at like if there was a final, like the final 5 doing a vote that they could get cut. But I don't think that's a problem worth the squeeze of let's not go after the stronger teams. I think you're better off taking that risk and then having maybe win the last elimination.
And maybe what it's leading up to is Nani and Turbo go home next week and Steve and Adam win the challenge. And Veronica does have to pick between Frank and Shane. But I think the bigger threat to Shane's game is Adam and Steve. Mm-hmm. And like Shane and Devon should be aligned with Frank and Sam on wanting to get rid of Adam and Steve. And they should be holding V and Katie's feet to the fire on that relationship. And maybe Shane just thinks it's easier to pick at the relationship with Frank and Sam because that's a newer relationship. Right. And she doesn't have the history. But that to me is where more of the rub is.
Totally. And I think I would assume the other part of it is there is the relationship that is much stronger than I think a lot of people thought going in between Nani and Devon. Like Devon won't push or won't say Nani and Turbo. So I think that is to a degree, like for Shane, they won't say their name. So that could be a problem. And I think Shane is spinning it for some reason as like Frank and Sam is more the threat rather than like Devon and Nani are like they're each other number one. They're not saying each other like Frank, like the way you wouldn't say Ashley, like Devon is not saying Nani. We can argue about why they're so how they got so tight, but that's like the case. So that should just be more his argument. Like, listen, guys, I would love to throw in Nani and Turbo. They're a great team. My partner won't do it, so I have to like do some other avenue here.
Yeah, it is interesting because when they have the conversation at the night out at the bar, Shane is like kind of saying it like, you don't need our vote for Nani and Turbo. Like, you have enough votes without us.
Mm-hmm.
And Veronica's like, people know you're playing the middle and they're pressuring me that you're playing the middle. I don't know who is they in that respect. I think that's more Veronica. But Shane is like not then saying, I'm not going to be able to vote for Dave. I'm not going to be able to vote for Nani. We're going to be in a stalemate and like, then maybe we'll go in or whatever. Right. So you have to plan around us. But what he does throw Davon under the bus for is like making the plan to try to target Frank and Sam when Veronica was in power. So he's willing to throw Davon under the bus for his moves, but not throw her under the bus for the places she actually is causing friction.
Yeah, it's a very, very messy game that Shane is playing. And it sucks that they don't normally do like all-stars reunions, but I would love for this season to have a reunion because I feel like there was a lot of questions that people would love to ask after watching this back and seeing it all play out. So Mark Long, if you're listening, let's do a reunion for this season of all of them, please.
Slay. What great evidence that this is a good season that we actually want a reunion and we're not like, what are they going to talk about for an hour?
Yeah, it helps because like for the other like challenge proper, like we don't need a reunion because everyone is on each other's podcasts talking about everything. Here, I feel like people are like kind of just like not on doing anything. I think it might have to do with people filming 41 at this point, so like people aren't around to do it. But that's great. That means there's more things to discuss.
Totally. Let's discuss Turbo because it has been a relatively quiet season for Turbo. I think a lot of us were like unsure what Turbo's return to the challenge was going to bring. I did not anticipate it being a fight over the cleanliness of the common areas.
And I think we got a sense of why it's been a quiet season for Turbo. And I think that's because everyone is scared to death of him and are avoiding him at all costs. So there has not been a situation. I think there could have been many of these fights throughout the season, but everyone's like, I am not talking to this dude. And it just like reached, I guess, the boiling point with him sleeping on the couch and like being upset with Adam's farts that it finally escalated.
It is a production failure to not beg Turbo for a confessional of why are you sleeping on the couch? And what was not clear is when Turbo does go to sleep on the couch in the club, it's like, is Turbo just sleeping a lot of places? So at times he is sleeping in the bunk bed, but during the day he is sleeping full time on the couch? Or is he taken up residency on the couch? In which case, I need someone who is not afraid of Turbo to ask him to camera, like, why are you sleeping in the living room in the first place?
Part of me thinks he's doing it because he wants this reaction. I think he's like, he in his like blood, he needs arguments and fights, and he himself though has been pretty quiet. He's been like pent up. He's like, I need someone to come at me. I need to call someone a pussy chicken. I need to go after someone. I'm just gonna sleep on the couch for the entire season, and someone's gonna be upset with me at some point, and then I'll be able to pop off and go after them.
See, I'm out here taking the very dangerous position of being on Turbo's side because I'm kind of on everybody's side in this argument because I also think Nani, to her credit, is keeping Turbo on a very short leash very effectively this season in terms of like limiting his interaction. So like you said, the house is afraid of him and Nani's got the reins on him. So like they're very far apart. But I think Turbo is just like sleeping. He's like, I'm on this couch, I'm sleeping. I don't really care what you guys are doing. I mean, I'd rather Adam not be farting where I'm sleeping, but he's not like taking umbrage with him directly. I'm also sympathetic to being someone who desperately wants to say something to someone confrontational, but doesn't want to start a problem. And the second Adam gets like the crack of an opening, when Turbo makes the very legitimate complaint, whether he's sleeping there or not, like, hey guys, there's kind of a lot of gross food around. let's like do our best to kind of clean up the drinks and the breakfast plates. Adam's like, oh yeah, well, why are you sleeping on the couch? And even Adam is like, I agree with you about the food and drinks, but since you've put it at issue, I'd
Yep.
love to address how annoying you are. That's
And
amazing.
then, as if waiting more so for someone to start the argument so they could jump in, Mel was just like waiting for someone to bring it up so she could jump down Turbo's throat and get it on the action too. So everyone was like waiting for the opening, and I can understand Mel waiting for some backup before going at Turbo, and Adam kind of like lit that spark, and then she was able to jump right on in.
Yeah, and what's crazy is later, like Mel is like, I took up defense of Nani. That's my friend. Don't yell at my friend. You yelled at her. Now I'm yelling at you. But then, in her staunch defense of her friend, she's then screaming over Nani, who's begging her to stop the fight. So, like, I don't know if the person you're defending is begging you to stop fighting, if it's still, you could say, for them and not just for your own energy that you want to release.
Yeah.
But lucky for everyone that Turbo's two grandmothers weren't there to slap them upside the head with sandals.
Well, as everyone may recall, I think the OG Turbo fight had to do with someone jumping into a fight that it was not part of them. When originally it was Turbo, I think it was Turbo and Ninja that were fighting, and then D jumped in. It might have been the opposite, but one of them was fighting with Turbo. The other one jumped in to defend it, and Turbo wanted out of it. He doesn't want anyone to jump in on fights. If he has a fight with one person, that's the only person he has a fight with. If anyone jumps in, he's gonna be more mad at you. So if you want to avoid the Turbo smoke, just don't start something with him, and then especially don't jump into someone else's fight.
You know, like, I don't think anybody could have gone to Turbo one-on-one and been like, hey, Turbo's like, everything cool? Like, are you feeling excluded in the room? Like, why are you, maybe it'd be better for your sleep if you didn't sleep in the living room where everybody's up and out and partying and has food out. Like, you could get a room. I still think Turbo would have had a negative reaction to that.
Totally.
But in the way that people came at him, I was sympathetic to him, kind of being like, why can't I just talk? I just simply raised that, like, it's been a little gross around the house, and then 3 people are yelling at me. I don't understand.
It's a great old school challenge, but this is a very real world fight. Again, All-Stars bringing the throwback in terms of the fight. So I love to see fighting over cleanliness and where people are sleeping in the house.
Here's my complaint. Where is the footage of the Steve and Turbo friendship? We've gotten a lot of fun Steve random being weird clips in past All-Star season. I need roll the tape on the Steve and Turbo friendship. And I love how Steve is like, he's like a really interesting guy, and I'm also terrified of him. So we've become good friends.
And I remember Steve last season, he would do like that some like odd like meditation, like fake fighting, like seminars. Yeah, like I feel like Turbo would be all about that. So they, where's them two doing that together?
I roll the footage. That's the shit they should have shown. I'll watch a 1-hour special of the Turbo and Steve friendship. I'm locked in.
Reunion,
I'm sat.
Bring back shit they should have shown. Come on, Mark Long. Bring back the classics.
Do we get a spoiler-ish tweet from Mark Long? He's settled down.
I haven't seen one. So I think we're good.
Okay, I want to ask you, because while I deeply understand what happened in the Turbo Adam Mel fight,
okay,
I don't understand as much what happened between Adam and Frank, because I had a different interpretation of Adam asking Frank what would happen if it came down to Adam and Steve versus Ashley and Dario than Frank seemed to have.
What was your different interpretation?
So I thought Adam was saying, like, so they're talking about, like, we've got to put in 2 star holders to free up a star. And it's a little awkward because 2 of the star holders in the room, and Adam and Frank. And so Frank just kind of says, like, look, if it's Ashley and Dario, it's Ashley and Dario. Kind of what he has to say in the presence of the other option. And Adam says, like, would you support us, like, as a game move over Ashley and Dario? And I thought what he meant was, like, would you be okay if we, like, you'd be really on board, but you wouldn't have to necessarily, like, cast your vote? Like, do you support that move? And Frank then is like, sorry, if you're asking me to choose between the 2 of you, like, I choose Ashley. I just thought that, like, wasn't necessarily what Adam was saying. I think I'm wrong because that's, like, it seemed to be confirmed by Adam. But I thought it like the question should have been like, would you be okay with that? Like, we wouldn't be alienating you. We just wouldn't make you cast a vote.
Yeah, no, I can understand that interpretation, but the fact that Adam then has like a confessional and a conversation, be like, I was trying to get full safety from Frank. I feel like it implies like if Nani and Turbo or a house vote, for instance, we're trying to get stars in, and you win the daily, are you going to throw us in? Or are you going to throw Dario and Ashley in? I think it was clear that he was saying, I'm going to be throwing at you, Adam and Steven. I think he was looking for the assurance that would be the opposite.
And for all the questions about Frank being so disloyal and like how could people watch this season, trust him next season, like I have no reason to think that Adam and Steve would have gone to Ashley and Dario and said, Frank told us he'd have our back instead of yours. It's not really the game that Adam and Steve play. I think Frank could have done more to sort of weasel around that and be like, I really hope it doesn't come to that. I really want to go to the end with you. I'm fine if they go up against Nani and Turbo, like, you know, whatever. Like, I feel like he just straight up looked at them and was like, I will have Ashley and Dario's back over yours. Right. So in terms of Frank not being trustworthy, like if you have a 13-year friendship with him, you could trust him.
Yeah, and I think Frank, I mean, he's trustworthy in the sense that you can trust him in like a game theory sense to do what is the best thing for his game. And clearly in this season, he is playing the game of I need to get some of the stronger teams out. Again, I think if he was paired with Ashley, I don't think he would necessarily be going so gung-ho of getting every single strong team out. I think he would probably pick a couple of teams and ride with them and take his chances in the final. But I think he knows here his best chance in this season is to get the stronger teams out. So I think Frank actually is one of the more trusting, or not even, I guess not trusting, but like understandable players. And he's very logical. And he's not going to be like a Shane and be like very confusing and not making moves that make sense for him. He's going to make the moves that make sense for him. So in that sense, he is a pretty trustworthy adversary.
Right. You can trust him in that he's predictable.
Yeah.
So it's like what Shane, and I think that's a perfect way to say why Shane's moves are so frustrating is like your success in the game is in line with what Frank sees as his own success in the game. So you can trust him even though you don't have a relationship with him, because him not being worried about you is your currency. And therefore you're aligned and should just go to the end against each other. Totally. But it's not usually how the challenge works. So it's very interesting.
Should we get to the daily?
The only other thing is I was even a little bit surprised that Frank ran to tell Dario and Ashley about this attempt from Adam and Steve. Because I just thought like Frank really can't handle much more like hot water being thrown at him as like, is he they? Is he scheming? Is he this? Dario has already shown a propensity to like be stupid, and what he's telling people got his own best ally eliminated, and he admits that was a mistake. He's not a great strategist. But it does reinforce that this is sort of the line between Frank and V that like is a fault line that could cause like a big problem. Is like he is working very actively against Adam and Steve. But yeah, we can get to the daily.
All right, let's get to the daily right after this. All right, we're back. Daily for this week. Shooting for the star. Each pair will have to solve a puzzle and then ride a RTV, right? Or is that an off-road vehicle? RV. What's the letter? RAV? Off-road vehicle? I don't know.
I'm holding up an A. Are you not looking at the screen?
I am. I can't. What letter are you doing? Is that an A?
That's an A. Isn't it an ATV? Like an all-terrain vehicle?
Yes, ATV.
I thought the podcast listeners would just think that you got it.
Team that does the star does the puzzle and hits the star in the fastest time is the winner.
I just thought the audio-only listeners would think you miraculously got it if I pantomimed the letter. Yeah, what was this? So, you know what's really funny? Because I can't remember like how many teams were still left in the game. But what I can remember is that in the Challenge 40, there was a Burger King sponsored challenge where TJ made the biggest deal he's ever made about any challenge, that we have been wanting to do this challenge for 1,000 years. And only now do we have the location that's perfect for this. And we're going to drive a car off a cliff. And it was called Fire Plunge. And you asked Corey how did they get the car dry? And he was like, we launched 10 different cars off that cliff, and I'll never forget it. And the challenge lived in Ali Lasher infamy. Now I come to this season and I see the same challenge with a smaller vehicle, and TJ makes no fanfare, no excitement. He's not even remotely jazzed at the idea that they're going to be launching an ATV off this cliff. And I'm like, hold on, I thought this was very location dependent. So I went to Wikipedia and I learned that they're in the exact same location for this season as they were in season 40. And that's all I have to say about this challenge. I didn't have time to form an opinion on the challenge. I was just doing research that everyone already knew. That's it.
Yep. It was giving very much for people that watch the Traders and then watch the international version of the Traders. They do the same challenges in the same seasons during the same time because they're in the same areas and they do the same things. And this was very much just doing the same thing. I do think TJ was excited. Didn't he say to start off, like, we're going to do like the sickest thing? I feel like he said he was like, maybe not as
I've waited my whole life to do this and watch you do this, and I'm so jealous that I can't do this. And Burger King's pumped thousands of dollars in burgers into this challenge.
But yes, it was maybe because he already saw it play out once, right? So it's like it's not your first time anymore, so it's not as excited for the second time. So, but it was giving very similar vibes.
It's a great turbo cool vehicle. Just a smaller vehicle. Launching a little trike off it versus a huge car.
Some of them exploded. I think Katie's and Veronica's didn't make it far enough, and I think they hit like a weird rock. It looked like the truck or the car exploded and broke into many different pieces. So I think hopefully they had multiple on set because that seemed like it broke.
Well, I'm assuming they had one for each contestant, like they did with the cars, because otherwise they're wet.
Mm-hmm. Do you think me and Sam give off very similar energies?
No.
Well, because Frank said that Sam gives off bus driver energy. So
it's like, is this a trick? I was like, is she a Pisces?
Just a very silly joke energy. That's all it is.
No, that's excellent. Yeah, here's something I need to finally say. And I think I've said it probably before, but it bears repeating. It is officially not fair how many times Veronica has been out of contention to win a challenge in proper and all-stars due to height. Her and Katie didn't even come close. And I don't believe it's because they didn't jump high enough. The shorter teams didn't hit the star. I feel like I'm constantly seeing Veronica struggle to jump to a bar, struggle to grab a flag. Make this height adjusted. I just don't understand.
I totally agree. It's one thing where there's some dailies and some eliminations where it's an advantage to be taller or shorter. It could maybe play to your benefit. But where one, it's completely impossible to do. It does seem like, what are we doing here to not even give them a real shot? I totally agree.
I did love Nicole and Mel. I'm not a plumber. She couldn't do the pipe puzzle. They don't hit the star. Katie and V don't hit the star. Otherwise, I was sort of seemed very easy to hit the star. Not much action, but it was quick. It was a quick challenge.
It was quick. Yeah, I mean, it's tough with TJ has to list off the top 4 teams of the 7. So just listing off the 3 that stink, basically, by doing so. But Dario and Ashley, Shannon, Devon, Steve, and Adam, Turbo Nani all did very well. Adam and Steve get the win.
And it's a great call out that there were only 3 others. Obviously, I would have thought there were 4 others, so it didn't hit me at the time. But 2 of the bottom 3 didn't hit the star. So only Frank and Sam hit the star, but sucked too much to even be in the top contention.
Yeah, and it shows again Mel and Nicole with their puzzles, and I feel like it's only gotten I know they're always not good at puzzles, but I think ever since Nicole didn't point out that their biggest weakness was puzzles, they've gotten worse and worse every time puzzles pop up. And, they're probably the most drawing dead in a final. I honestly would put Katie and Veronica ahead of them in a final because there's going to be some type of puzzles. And, if the final just happens to skew more, carnival-ish games style, Katie and Veronica have an infinitely better chance of winning a final than Mel and Nicole do.
Yeah, I would co-sign that for sure. Should we just get right to the House vote? We talked most about
Yeah, I think we pretty much
the drums.
sussed everything out. I did think, I know Turbo's like tough to deal with. I did feel like Nany sometimes almost too quick to like go 0 to 100 to shoot him down, like to the sense of like she's making him seem worse in a particular moment than he actually was acting, and it just riles up people more to a degree. I don't know. I'm sure she knows him better than I do, like being his partner, but it just seemed like she was going so hard at him so quickly that it makes everyone else like almost more threatened. It's like if there's like a dog, it's like you're just like so aggressively shooting him down. There's no room for growth or training or adjustment. I don't know. It just seemed like she was very quickly to go 0 to 100 on him.
Yeah, I agree. Again, this whole episode felt like Turbo was mostly sleeping and people were angry at him, and it's set up like everyone's been avoiding Turbo because they're afraid of him, so he hasn't really had confrontations. Maybe there's stuff we haven't seen where he's been like really, really disrespectful. I mean, we've seen his capability to be disrespectful to people, so perhaps we're not seeing it in the edit. But I agree, the edit doesn't do Nany favors. She immediately goes to like a screaming match with him, and it feels like it's an escalation. She probably has seen that she only has success with him when she talks that sternly to him. So it's a weird. I mean, query why we're bringing someone back that everybody in the house is afraid of. Like, why are we doing that? You know, like, is Turbo adding that much to the show that his housemates should be afraid? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. But so we get to the house vote, and it turns out basically being unanimous that Dario and Ashley are going in. I did not think that was going to be the case. I thought it'd be basically unanimous that Turbo and Nany were going in. So that was a bit of a surprise, as well as finding out that Mel and Nany are very close. Who knew? They're very close.
Yeah. I think that was somewhat part of like Mel's hesitation to flip last week, maybe like the dotted line there, but we definitely get that reinforced here with Mel taking up for Nany's defense. But assuming that Devon and Mel weren't going to vote for Nany and Turbo weren't going to vote for Nany, I think the house just was out of options, right? Like, because Adam and Steve can't vote, so they don't really have anything to do. And I think it's really 6 of 1 at this point. I think no matter what the edit tried to do, and it was quite interesting, and I was still interested in what Adam and Steve were ultimately going to do. I was going to be shocked if it wasn't going to be Nany and Turbo against Dario and Ashley, no matter if they were the house vote, the Adam and Steve vote, whatever.
Yeah, so I do. What's very interesting about the way this plays out is Shane, after Dario and Ashley are voted in, Shane has a conversation with Adam, and he's making a good case I think, to Adam why they should vote in Frank and Sam. But what's so baffling about it is it's like a good case to Adam, but it's a horrible case for Shane. Like, he shouldn't be making it. Adam should be thinking about the case in his head in the sense that if you vote in Frank and Sam, you break up a very clear voting block between Frank and Dario and Ashley. You separate Frank from Veronica for Adam and Steve. And for Adam and Steve, they now can see like they're 1 or 2 eliminations from the final. They probably should want to have at least one other strong star holder team in front of them to give the house another person to throw into elimination against Nany and Turbo in like the last elimination. Here, it's all set up that everyone should want to have Nany and Turbo going against Adam and Steve. But if Dario and Ashley are there in front of them, there's a way to finagle the votes to have it be Dario and Ashley going against Nany and Turbo. So I think Shane was like making a very good case to Adam, but it's like Shane shouldn't be making it. Adam should, like, this should be the case that Adam should be making, like, to Steve as like a conversation. But it's a horrible case for Shane.
I think you're making a better argument than Shane was making when it comes to it. Because I think he, at least what we saw, stopped at if Dario and Ashley come back and if they win or Frank and Sam win, they'll send you in. But I don't think Adam and Steve are hearing this and thinking that Frank and Sam have any real chance to win the last challenge. But what you're arguing about who's left in an elimination to take out the stronger people, like that is a much more convincing argument to me than even what Shane was saying. Agreed with you completely. It makes no sense that Shane is unwilling to work with Frank. It's quite personal, it seems, and isn't based in game, which I think is frustrating for Frank. It's frustrating for the audience. What is not accounted for in the episode is Veronica's influence on Adam and Steve, if any. I was a little bit frustrated. I didn't get to see Veronica talking to Adam and Steve after they won. I think we have like the pre-plan that starts the episode to say like, okay, the next elimination is going to be the two strong star holders that are not in the room with us. I'd like to see Veronica continuing to make the pitch to Adam and Steve after the fact. I would guess she probably vouched for Frank's deal a lot. And like, trust me, I know Frank, we're working with you. And it just can't be discounted that I think Adam and Steve, based on the game they've been forced to play, are playing week to week. A lot of it, they're trying to cut deals, but they know it's very week to week. And if they can get a shot at Nany and Turbo or Dario and Ashley and guaranteeing one of the strongest teams out, they're going to take it. And I respect that level of gameplay.
Totally. Yeah, I it's not even that I think they made a wrong move. I just think there is a case in this particular instance that you could make the argument that they should throw in Frank and Sam. And I mean, I just think, again, the source of it coming from Shane was like baffling because it makes no sense. But I think if Adam and Steve were shown, like if the argument was like from Adam and Steve debating with Veronica and Veronica was pushing, no, you have to throw in Nany and Turbo, and Adam and Steve were like, well, I don't know. I feel like we like need a buffer. We need to like that would make sense. And I can see the logic from both sides. But the fact that Adam was making the push that we have to throw in Nany and Turbo and Shane was making the push, no, throw in Frank and Sam is like very backwards.
100%. The only indication we get of why Shane is like this is this weird confrontation we see between Frank and Shane that honestly like doesn't really lead anywhere, except Shane is like, I control the social game. And it really is like Shane seems personally threatened by Frank, not in-game threatened by Frank, both in his relationship with Veronica and perhaps just his standing on the show. And we'll get more into it because there's a follow-up from last week on like the state of social media affairs with Frank and Shane and Corey. But I think in episode is the only peek we get of like where Shane's motivations are coming from.
Yeah. And I was fully expecting them to have this conversation. I guess silly me. I thought they were going to like squash their beef and they would both come to the realization like, look, I know we've had our problems through the season, but we're so close to making this final. Let's get all the strong teams out, and like you, me, Katie, and Veronica, let's battle out in the final, and maybe one of us actually could win this whole thing. I thought that's where this conversation was going to go. I couldn't believe that it's ended still with them hating each other. Or mainly Shane hating Frank, I would say. So it was wild that I really was very surprised that they didn't come to an understanding after that.
Yeah, it is insane. I wish also we had a little bit more of Devon's perspective, like as her alliance kind of gets whittled down, like what she's thinking about Shane kind of burning bridges on his own side, which, you know, should have been working for her. But maybe like if Shane makes the final and there's some reckoning where Frank goes out, or if Shane and Devon go out, like maybe we'll get it then. Yep.
Anything else for the elimination?
Hold up. No.
Nany and Turbo voted in, as discussed. They are playing Hold Up, one partner at a time. One partner is holding up a platform. The other person's collecting the giant puzzle pieces. They have 3 minutes at a time to try to put together the puzzle. After 3 minutes, the person has to drop the platform. The pieces fall down. The other person tries to solve the puzzle.
Yeah, I liked this as a mix of like endurance and a puzzle for like sort of an equalized elimination. Perhaps it would have been more interesting if the puzzle was slightly harder and they made them do it for like 5 or 6 minutes where like someone might actually drop because it's like physically too taxing to hold up. Yep. It didn't really seem like the holding element was material.
Yeah, I agree. Though I wish this was like a real throwback to like, I think this was other rival season, or maybe, I don't know, Battle of the Seasons, but like the one where Big Easy was like in the water and it's like a very like endurance type thing. And you have to be like in the water, holding your breath to hold like the puzzle up or like lift the other person up. I wish it was a lot more physical too. Again, it doesn't have to be hand to hand combat physical, but it didn't seem like, to your point, that platform or the whatever it is was that difficult to hold up for the 3 minutes. I think the hardest part was like when they were putting pieces down to put a little bit more force on it and something like that, but that didn't seem to be too challenging. Yeah, I wish like the other part of it was difficult. I would have even been fine if like they made that much more difficult and there was no swapping. It was just like one person has to do the extreme physical part, holding it up, and the other person does the puzzle, and like they don't even deal with like a swapping part of it. But
I did like the swap only because I was thinking like, oh, it'd be funny if this was like a Leroy and Devin team. And it was like one is the puzzle person and one is like, I'm terrible at puzzles as like an identity. So like we were basically just like derping for like 3 minutes, like do.
Right.
Didn't really happen here. I mean, we did have like Nani in audio being like, Turbo's so distracting. I'm just waiting out this 3 minutes till he could do it himself. But it wasn't like someone being hilariously incapable.
But Nani and Turbo get another win. Send another strong team home. Dario and Ashley leaving as friends. Doesn't seem like they've rekindled things to my chagrin, but they're friends, which is good.
Yeah, slay. Love to see them leaving with closure. Another point in Turbo and Nani's column of like Turbo being good at puzzles. Interesting. And next week we're gonna have a star challenge, so we'll see if V and Katie can catch the star like they want to or not.
Yeah, so we got Mel, Nicole, Shane, Devon, Katie, Veronica, and those three.
Don't ask me.
Those three.
Right. A little time for a little follow up on Shane and Frank from the social media. Okay. So first I just want to say it seems like Frank and Corey are really close friends. I would love to see them on another season together. It's like we said, like Corey's Achilles heel has been like trusting people he's not really working with and not really being able to gel. Be very interesting for both of them, I think, to come into a season together with like a really close established friendship. Be very, very excited to see that. It's just manifesting that. But Ashley and Frank did what appeared to be an Instagram live. I caught a clip of it on Reddit. And Frank, so this is all coming from Frank. Frank said that Shane asked everyone not to speak on his relationship. So Frank would not be doing that, like his personal relationship outside of the house with a partner, I guess. But Shane, according to Frank, pursued Corey in the hotel before the season started. Corey was into it. They hooked up, according to Frank. Shane then had a shame spiral, as Frank called it, and started targeting Corey the entire game. Frank says they played truth or dare, and Shane dared himself to kiss Corey, so they kissed again on camera this time. And then within 30 minutes, he was going around the house, according to Frank, and saying Corey was the aggressor and like he didn't want that to happen, whatever. So that's the source of the issue from Frank's perspective, that then Shane began targeting Corey aggressively to get him out so he didn't like talk about the hookup on camera or whatever. Frank also goes on to say that he loves Skims underwear and was wearing Skims underwear and was the only man in the house who had Skims underwear, and that he had an extra pair to challenge and it was missing. And then he saw Shane putting them on. So he is alleging that that Shane stole his underwear. Okay. So Shane responded to all of this in a comment on the Reddit thread, and it's like a 6-point response. He also posted an Instagram where he said, much love to Instinct Magazine for the support. He posted an article written about him in this magazine. It's an honor to be the only OG gay and one of the very small few group of challengers who's been on each era of the challenge. See no evil monkey emoji. Next time I'll throw on my new pair of Skims underwear and send you something a little more NSFW, fingers crossed emoji. Now, what's interesting about this is like, I think some of the criticism for Shane is that like, he's threatened by Corey and Frank and is not supportive of like other gay men on the show. So like a little weird for Shane to like make this comment about himself, but maybe from Shane's perspective, it's like, I paved the way and now these people are attacking me. But here's his defense on Reddit. According to Shane, Corey and I did not hook up at the hotel. Says really nice things about Corey, but like we did not hook up. We were just kikiing and having fun. And then he says like what he was doing with Sylvia, whatever. Then number 2, he says his hotel room was dirty. Like Sylvia and him were like pigging out and they were like messing up the room for the days they were there. So I don't know if that's like, I couldn't have possibly used my room. It was dirty. First night there, he said there was mandatory truth or dare given by TJ. Show me the footage.
That's wild. Oh my God, I need to see that. That's an all-timer.
I find that like hard to believe,
Very
but
hard
I need
to
to
believe.
see it. It's a crazy thing to make up. Like it's also just irrelevant that TJ was the host. Like, so I'd like to see it.
Right.
Big T pulled dare and she gave me the dare to kiss Corey, which I did for TV purposes, not romantic hopes, and was happy to do so. I thought Frank's husband's letters were incredibly sweet. This, I don't know where Frank talked about this, so maybe it was in the longer live. I guess Frank implied that Shane was dragging his husband's letters, and he cleared that up, but I didn't talk about that, so we'll move on. He talks about Frank's body, so maybe, again, there were more allegations from Frank about that. And then addressing the thievery, allegedly, he says, I'll share some pics later on, what it looks like for us as we wait for a challenge. Let me just say there's no privacy. It would be impossible for me to steal anything without it being seen. But, quote, it was seen. Who in the world is going to let a complete stranger or challenger they hate steal their underwear and not say something? There's no privacy in the house. Hello, TV, smiley emoticon. Wouldn't you put that on an episode? There would be witnesses, and Frank would have immediately mocked and destroyed me if I did that. Plus, I have a huge effing ASS. I am not fitting into anyone's underwear but my own. I don't wear briefs, and I hate name brands other than Under Armour. As I stated earlier, Frank is not my type, so I don't want the smell either. Frank has some personal vendetta, I understand, from a psychological standpoint, but the clear exaggerations and lies takes a lot of psychological understanding I don't have, so I'll leave it to you. Thank you and much love to all the fans. I'm really happy everyone is enjoying the show, and I'm thankful to Frank's contribution to its success.
It's quite the report. I'm still in the TJ leading the truth and dare thing. I don't know if I'll ever get over that.
I'd like that to know if that's confirmed. Honestly, from Shane's perspective, like if your truth is different than what Frank is saying, that must suck. I think he should have just written, I'm really happy everyone's enjoying the show and I'm thankful for Frank's contribution to its success. Like that would be more powerful than the explanation. I couldn't have possibly stolen the underwear even if I wanted to. I mean, what's hard for Shane here is the edit completely supports that there is this personal vendetta and that it's outside of the game. So it's just, I'd almost rather hear from Shane's perspective why he was making the game moves he was making than have him sort of directly pick apart everything Frank's saying. But the drama continues.
Until next time, you can subscribe.
Sponsored by Skims. Not us, but maybe Frank.
Burger King is for proper. Skims is for all stars. You can subscribe. RHAPswebsite.com/challenge feed. Going under Cohen Brian _ on Twitter. Challenge wrap-ups on TikTok. You can follow you.
You can't follow me anywhere, but what I would like to know is if Skims did do targeted advertising or like in-show advertising on the challenge, would it have the same effect on you as BK does and that you'd order Skims immediately that day?
That's a great question. We will have to find out at some point. Someone's got to make it happen. We'll see. We'll be back next week with the 6 teams going to 5, episode 9. Until then, have a good one.
Drag me.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.